Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
Good evening and welcome to Tider Insider TV. As you heard, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, and Alabama is back on track, at least for a week. The Crimson Tide used a strong second-half surge in beating Ole Miss 24-10 this past Saturday afternoon on a gorgeous day for football at Bryant-Denny Stadium. The Crimson Tide collected 241 of its 356 total yards of offense in the second half and outscored the Rebels 18-3 in the final 30 minutes. It really was a dominant half of football. Jalen Milroe started at quarterback, and with all eyes on the signal caller, he came through with a really good game. 17 of 21 for 225 yards, a touchdown. He did have one of those kind of worrisome interceptions where you didn't see a guy. They were playing man coverage. One guy was just kind of floating there in the zone, and he threw it to him in the end zone to cost Alabama a red trip opportunity. Ty Simpson got in for a two-point conversion. Jace McClellan came up big. A week after it was Roydell Williams that closed it out against USF. It was McClellan with 105 yards on 17 carries, a lot of that in the fourth quarter. The defense was led by Terrion Arnold, who finished with 8 tackles, an interception, and 2 quarterback hurries on blitzes. Now, this was a good performance for Alabama, and it was the 8th straight win for the Crimson Tide against the Rebels, and it keeps Lane Kiffin winless against Nick Saban. Now, this Saturday, it's the other Mississippi school in the SEC, Mississippi State. Alabama will hit the road Saturday night, go to Davis Wade Stadium at Scott Field in Starkville. That's an 8 o'clock kickoff on ESPN. But the Tide trying to get the Mississippi double this coming Saturday night. Let me bring Rodney Orr in. Ole Miss, Rodney, really, obviously, just the beginning of the SEC schedule was game number 1, but with a lot of heat on Alabama, a lot of criticism, a lot of people picking Alabama to lose this game. Of course, you knew after the game Ole Miss is not very good. That was the theme then. But before the game, a lot of people thought Ole Miss would come in here and win, and they were up 7-6 at the half. It looked like another Alabama team that was going to shoot itself in the foot. They did that a lot in the first half, but in the second half cleaned it up, and I think showed a glimpse of what this team can be.
Yeah. Hey, I've always said Ole Miss is really good medicine when Alabama's struggling, and they were good medicine on Saturday. No, they played actually, Gary. I thought Ole Miss played pretty well in the first half. Alabama did not play really well, obviously. Second half, you mentioned it. I thought they cleaned some things up, did a lot better. I thought the defense played really well from start to finish for the most part. And I thought offensively, again, you had the struggles in the first half, but they kind of got in rhythm in the second half. Milroe started making some really nice throws, some of the shorter throws, made a couple of downfield throws. You saw some emergence from Jalen Hale, the true freshman receiver. Look, I think they've got some playmakers, Amari Niblack, C.J. Dupree, that we started to see in this game. Jace McClellan, we've talked about it many times. I've said, I don't think we've seen the best of Jace McClellan yet, and I think Saturday he had over 100 yards, he had a 105, and I think, Gary, he kind of starts to get into a rhythm now.
A lot of things to be happy and encouraged about, Rodney. I think the number one thing for me might have been the offensive line play in the second half. Again, the first half was not good. Mistakes. You know, we had a terrible snap down on the goal line, a lot of plays for loss, but in the second half, they really leaned on that Ole Miss defensive line and wore them out. Ole Miss was tired. McClellan, those 2- and 3-yard runs started going for 6, 7, and 8 yards. And I thought Caden Proctor, they moved him out of the lineup for a while. They played some more than 5 offensive linemen on Saturday. I thought in the second half, it looked like he was really, his feet were getting set, and instead of reaching, he was stepping in it, and he was powerizing some people. They really played well.
Yeah, and I think Nick Saban and Tommy Rees also decided, Gary, a little bit, hey, let's run downhill. Let's run straight at them. And I think that was effective. I think Jace, again, did an outstanding job running the football. You could see he was gaining confidence again. I think Jace is a really quality back, and I think as we continue to see Alabama gain confidence in that run game, you're going to see Jace, you're going to see Roydell, and I really don't know with Jam Miller this week in terms of that, you know, he was
He'll miss
with
the first
target,
half,
right, with the first half. So perhaps we see number 22, who a lot of people were anxious to see, Justice Haynes, a true freshman.
Tyler Booker, the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. And on defense, let me throw this stat at you. The 10 points allowed, that's the lowest output Ole Miss has had under Lane Kiffin. I mean, 3 points in the second half. I mean, you see it. They got after Jackson Dart. this was an offense that had come in here hitting on all cylinders. Now, people can say what they want after the game, but coming into the game, I know there were a lot of people expecting and predicting Ole Miss to score 30 or more points in this game. To hold them to 10, that was a really nice defensive effort.
I think it was. Look, I said last week that, based on all the people I talked to, all of my Ole Miss sources, they thought their offensive line was probably their weak spot and that Alabama might be able to exploit that, and they did. And so that was obviously good to see. But like you said, Gary, they were averaging over 50 points a game in the games that they had played. Jackson Dart, some people were saying, hey, this guy might be the best quarterback in the SEC coming into this game. Obviously, they did have some injuries at receiver. Trey Harris played some. He's a sensational player, but he was a little bit limited. Judkins played, even though they said he was questionable. But again, I think overall defensively, this Alabama defense, Gary, when you look at it, when you really look at this Alabama defense right now, they've had one bad quarter this season. That was the fourth quarter of the Texas game.
4 sacks and 10 quarterback hurries for the Bama defense. All right, now it's time for Coach Talk. Alabama head coach Nick Saban shared his thoughts on Jalen Milroe. And the coach was asked, how did your QB1 play in the game against the Rebels?
I thought Jalen played really, really well. They played trap down there, and you guys don't know what that is, but, somebody zones off in the flat and everybody's playing man-to-man. Something we do, something Pete does, and got fooled by that when he threw the interception. But other than that, I thought he really played well. He got a little dinged up, but he'd be fine. And I thought he showed a lot of leadership out there, made some good throws, we made some explosive plays. So we got to continue to try to create opportunities for our players down the field.
Rodney, what did you see from Jalen Milroe, maybe that you had not seen in the other 2 games that he played in?
Well, I think for one thing, what we saw was Tommy Rees. I think Tommy Rees had a really good feel for what he wanted to do with Jalen Milroe. He started him off early, running the football a little bit. But also, Gary, I don't think he asked him to do too much. I think they gave him some plays. They gave him a game plan that he felt really comfortable with. The short, quick throws, he hit those. He hit a few down the field that were open. And then he hit the big throw to Jalen Hale, the true freshman. Look, that might have been his best throw of the year, Gary, because he hung in the pocket. He took a shot, made the throw. And, of course, Jalen Hale made a fantastic play on the ball. But I think that's something that moving forward, hopefully, that's something that Jalen Milroe can use that second half to really gain some confidence.
Milroe 17 of 21, 225, a touchdown to Hale, and that 1 interception. But good performance for him. And if he plays that well, Alabama will be a tough out for anybody left on the schedule. Well, still to come tonight on Tider Insider TV, we'll preview this week's road contest against Mississippi State. Also, the men's basketball team opened up practice yesterday, and then on the heels of that first practice, they picked up a huge recruit today in terms of a verbal commitment. We'll have Bama basketball coming up for you. Plus, a little bit later on, we'll be getting to all your phone calls, emails, and tweets. The phone number, as always, is 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. This is the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. The one, the only, Tider Insider TV. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
And this is actually a bigger challenge for us than the last 2 games, in my opinion, in terms of, this team is very, physical, very aggressive on defense, create a lot of negative plays. We got a lot of starters back. They know their system, they know their scheme, they play very, very well.
And welcome back into TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris, and that, of course, head coach Nick Saban saying that this game, Rodney, coming up in Mississippi State, a bigger challenge than the Ole Miss game. The Crimson Tide is headed to Starkville this Saturday night to take on the Bulldogs at Davis Wade Stadium at Scott Field. This will be the 108th meeting between the 2 teams. Alabama, 87 wins. And, in fact, they've played Mississippi State more than they have any other opponent in the history of the program. Unfortunately, because of the 2 teams coming in, Texas and Oklahoma, this will be the last year that they play on an annual basis, as the schedule will change. Won't play next year. Alabama went to Stark Vegas a couple of years ago and won big, 49-9. Won handily last year. State didn't score until nearly the last play of the game. Interesting team, Rodney, because we know about the unfortunate passing of Coach Leach in December. Zach Arnett, the defensive coordinator, took over the team, led them to a bowl victory, and then was named the permanent head coach. But with that, he changed the offense around. They went back to more of a ground-oriented attack and, quite frankly, struggled a little bit on offense. And against LSU, they were abysmal. But at South Carolina this past Saturday night, Will Rogers can sling it, and they kind of went back to the air raid principles. They threw the ball, and he had a huge night, even though they lost the game. So I guess you don't really know for sure what you're going to get with Mississippi State offensively on Saturday night. I guess a combination maybe of both offenses.
Yeah, I think, Gary, they ran for like 33 yards on 23 carries. It wasn't very good. They only averaged like 1 yard, barely 1 yard a carry, 1.4 I think it was. But you know what? There you see it. Will Rogers, that's what he likes to do. He likes to throw the football. He threw for 487 yards in this game. Griffin right there, the Dedrick Griffin, remember that name. He had 7 catches for 256 yards in this game. He had never had a 100-yard game. And he goes for 256 against South Carolina. It was a shootout. You know, obviously they got blown out by LSU in their first SEC game. But, you know, this is a team, like you said, Gary, now they're throwing the football defensively. They got a lot of pressure on Rattler. They're going to come after Jalen Milroe. They got a lot of pressure on Rattler. They sacked him 4 times. But guess what? I mean, this should be a game that Alabama's defensive front gets after Will Rogers. He was sacked 9 times in this game.
They can get pressure. Yeah, listen, Mississippi State on defense has got some experience. They got some experience up front.
He's been number 22.
He's been there for 6-7 years, it seems like. But it's an interesting game, like I said. On paper, Alabama should win this game. I don't think there's anything a doubt about that. But I don't even want to say one good game. I want to say one good half. Yeah. One good half gives you reason for optimism, but it's not like Alabama's a proven commodity yet this year. So this is another big game and another opportunity to prove that this is a team in Alabama that can make it to Atlanta.
Look, I think it's a huge opportunity, Gary, because like you said, you've got some really tough games coming up. Mississippi State's could be a tough game. But you've got a tough road coming up. You know, to be able to go on the road here, it's a real challenge. But it prepares you, I think, for the next week when you go to Texas A&M and College Station. So, this is a really big opportunity for Alabama.
And our score predictions coming up, of course, at the end of the show. Let's talk some hoops, and this is big for Alabama men's basketball. Top 25 senior Aiden Sherrell. He's a 2024 player, 6'11", one of the top centers in the country. He committed to Alabama on Tuesday. Now, this is a guy who's one of the highest-rated players to commit to Alabama in the history of the program. As I said, Rodney, 6'11", he could have gone about anywhere. I mean, he had a final list of Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, Michigan State, and Alabama, many other schools that offered. As I said, 6'11", he's coming out of prolific prep in Napa, California. He's originally from Detroit. What makes him interesting, Rod, is that he is another one of these guys that Nate Oates looks for in his system. 6'11", he can post up, play by the rim, also has the mid-range game, and he can go out and shoot the 3. I mean, listen, it's not just about getting talent. I think for Nate Oates, it's about getting people that fit your system, and this guy seems to be, ideal in that regard.
Yeah, great point about fitting the system and being great players, too. Wimp Sanderson obviously had a lot of great talent here. Nate Oates, wow, the way he's recruiting, Gary, he's going head up with everyone. He's not really backing down from anyone, and he's landing these guys. So, obviously, this is a really big pickup.
Yeah, did you think you'd see a time, and don't get me wrong, Coach Newton said, that you consistently recruit the kind of talent that he's recruiting here?
No. Yeah. To be able to go into North Carolina like they did last year and, recruit a 5-star player that North Carolina really wanted, that doesn't happen, or it certainly hadn't happened in the past for Alabama. But to be able to do that's really an indication of what Nate Oates is doing.
Yeah, Sherrell's the first commit for 2024. More are coming, and I tell you this, I think there are going to be a couple more really highly regarded and recruited players that commit to Alabama. I've said it before on my radio show. I think I've said it here, Rodney, on TITV. I think Nate Oates is the best equipped coach for the modern game, from knowing how to handle the portal, NIL, the system in which he plays, as guys want to play in that system. He's already proven very quickly that he can develop guys for the NBA. And, the best is yet to come. You keep knocking on the door. You're good often enough, they're going to get to a Final Four. He's had 2 Final Four caliber teams the last 3 years. Neither one of them made it, but both of them were good enough. It's going to happen. Well, still to come on TITV, former Alabama quarterback Tua Tagovailoa lit it up for the Dolphins. And Jalen Hurts made history this weekend as well. Learn more about the 2 former Tide signal callers in the NFL. And up next, we're welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. You see the information right there on your screen. Interact with Tider Insider TV right now. Call 205-348-9882. There's the email address, and you also can reach us on social media, #TITV. We'll be right back after this. in on Bama in the NFL, and to say that Tua and the Dolphins lit it up would be the all-time understatement. 70 points. They could have had more. 70-20 over the Broncos, over 700 yards of offense. These are record numbers. Tua was 309 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. He completed his first 17 passes in the game, which is one short of the NFL record. I don't really know what to say, and there was no Jalen Waddle in the game. Then last night, Jalen Hurts set a record. He has the most rushing quarterback touchdowns in the history of the NFL in the first 50 games of his career. He's got 20. The Eagles win again. Both the Eagles and Dolphins join the 49ers as the only undefeated team. Amari Cooper, Rodney, you see that? He had a big game for the Browns as Deshaun Watson started to get going, and he had a touchdown call back. When the guy caught him out of bounds, he was in by a foot. Brian Branch, they love him with the Lions. He's mauling people. 11 tackles, including 3 for loss. He broke up 2 passes. He set a record in the first NFL defender in 29 years to have 10-plus tackles, 3-plus tackles for loss, and 2 passes defended in the same game. And Levi Wallace, 2 interceptions for the Steelers to help them win their game against the Raiders. And one more not on there that I want to mention. Remember this guy, Jaron Reed?
Oh, yeah.
He's back with the Seahawks. So what about this game? 8 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, and a tackle for loss.
Wow.
For the veteran nose tackle.
Wow.
And there's others that I could have mentioned too, Alabama and the NFL. But what about Tua and the Dolphins hanging 70? They had a chance to kick a field goal, would have given them the all-time record, 72's all-time record. I like Mike McDaniel for not doing it. I mean, there's no reason to do it at that point. But they could have.
Yeah. Look, I mean, what an explosion. The speed that they have offensively. And Waddle not even in the game. Devin Achane, the running back. I mean, they are loaded with speed.
Did you hear about Achane? He went nuts, and now it's Achane. Okay. There you go. All right, welcome back.
Tony Dorsett.
Yeah, TITV. All right, let's get to the phone lines. Sammy in Walker County. Hadn't heard from Sammy in a while. Hey, good evening, Sammy.
Hello, Gary.
Hey, man.
And hello, Rodney. Great coverage, guys.
Thanks.
And, I'm just impressed with the way our defense is headed, Gary and Rodney. And the young guys playing good. We're going to get tested in the secondary this week, but maybe they'll be up for the challenge. And I like the way the defense is headed. They're looking good.
Yeah, Sammy, I love the way the defense is playing. I'll let Rodney pick it up with analysis. But right now, they, I think, are in the conversation for best defense in the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, they're really playing extremely well, Gary. And I thought they were going to be improved with Kevin Steele, and they look to be dramatically improved right now. And again, you talked about the challenge they'll face this week with Will Rogers, those receivers, and that's going to be interesting because I think Alabama in that secondary, that's really coming around. It might be the strong suit of the secondary, and I'm really excited, too, about the opportunity to see the defensive front this week, see if they can really affect Will Rogers with the pass rush.
Yeah, you'll have to, or he can pick you apart if you don't. All right, let's go to Alabaster and talk with our pal Putty. Hey, Putty.
Hey, how's it going, Rodney and Gary?
Going well.
I wanted to get y'all's opinion on Elijah Pritchett and Jahad Campbell.
All right. I thought Elijah Pritchett got in there at left tackle, gave Proctor a break. I thought he played pretty well in the game. And Jahad Campbell, I'll just say this, monster. I mean, he's got a chance to be. I had somebody tell me in the football building, not anywhere there yet, but compared him to Micah Parsons just a little bit.
Wow.
Size, speed, versatility. High praise.
He's really good. Here's a 5-star player.
Yeah.
He's committed to Clemson. He flipped to Alabama late. What a big flip Alabama got when Jahad Campbell out of IMG Academy. But who else did he
Pritchett.
Elijah Pritchett. Yeah, I actually talked to a former offensive lineman here on the way into the show, and he said, look, I thought Elijah Pritchett played really, really well when he had the opportunity. So keep an eye on him. And guess what? We haven't talked enough about Tim Keenan, that defensive lineman. We've been talking all summer, telling you, watch out for number 96. We're hearing a lot of good things about him. Tim Keenan's playing really well.
We've got an email on him tonight, so we might get to it.
Okay.
Still to come on Tider Insider TV. Speaking of that, our email question of the day. Plus, Alabama soccer continues its home winning streak. And more of your phone calls right here on the program, 205-348-9882. Go ahead and give us a call. We're going to come back with more after this. The Tide don't lose at home, baby. Alabama soccer 26-game home win streak on Sunday. They beat Vanderbilt 1-0, and they're all going to play again on Friday at Kentucky, 6:30 on the SEC Network Plus. Welcome back into Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Let's get right back out to the phone lines. Johnny in Bessemer is up with us, and then we'll get to our email of the day. Hey, Johnny, what's going on?
Hey, Gary, what's going on, man?
Hey, man.
Hey, man, I know Alabama. I'm glad that their defense. I'm glad Alabama's defense is good. But I'm worried about LSU and the rest of the games ahead of us, man. I love to see Alabama go to the line and win it all, man.
Yeah, John, you're not the only one. A lot of people love to see Alabama go to Atlanta, and they do have tough games left. And, Rodney, I'll say this real quickly. I think Alabama can beat anybody on their schedule, but there's several of those teams that can beat Alabama. It's that final line, as far as the margin for error.
Well, we've talked about that. Real slim margin of error this year, I think. And, again, you look at these teams, John, and, you start with Mississippi State this weekend, then all of a sudden you have to go to Texas A&M. You've got Arkansas, who played LSU really, really close, got a great quarterback, K.J. Jefferson. Then, of course, you've got LSU, as you mentioned, coming in. You've got Tennessee. And then at the end of the year, of course, you got Auburn. So it's a real challenging schedule down the stretch.
Indeed it is. Let's get to our email question of the day. It's brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. KDM Service Corporation serving your family like our family. What do you think is possible as far as improvement over the next few games? That's from Cece, I should say, in Tuscaloosa, Rodney.
Look, I think, again, you look at offensively. I think that's where you want to take some steps up front offensively, running the football. I think if they can continue to do that, build that identity that they want to build, that they've talked about building in terms of dominating up front, I think that's an opportunity that you're going to have this week and continuing to move forward. Milroe continue to get comfortable, continue to become consistent as a passer. And, Gary, I tell you, I like some of these players that we're seeing. Amari Niblack. You saw C.J. Dupree. C.J. Dupree made a really nice play, nice catch. And Jalen Hill, the true freshman, I think he can become a big factor down the stretch. And, again, with the emergence, the running of Jace McClellan, this team, this offense, I think, has a lot of room for improvement. They've got a high ceiling.
All right, James and Wadali, I'm sorry we don't have time to get to you, but I tell you what, I know what you're going to ask. I'll mention it briefly before the end of the show about a running back from over there, Hanalina. We'll be back with our predictions coming up next right here on the Gary Harris Show. All right, we're back. I do a radio show every morning called the Gary Harris Show. I know this is TITV. That's what happens sometimes when you're in a hurry. James and Wadali, though, wanted to ask about Jordan Washington from Helena, running back, 311 yards and 4 touchdowns against Pelham on Friday night as Helena is undefeated. And that's, he's on some people's radar, I can promise you that. All right, it's prediction time, Rodney. The Bulldogs and the Crimson Tide this Saturday night in Starkville. Who you got?
It's an 8:20 kick. I mean, that's kind of late.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see how Alabama kind of adjusts to that. But, look, I think Alabama right now gained a lot of confidence in that Ole Miss game in that second half. I think they'll take care of business in Starkville, 27-13.
I agree with you. I think they're going to take care of business even by a wider margin. I really like what I saw from Alabama in that second half against Ole Miss. Maybe it's fool's gold, but I think Alabama's going to carry over that momentum. I like them big on Saturday night, 34-13. Well, a touchdown. We both got the 13, but we'll see what happens. All right, that's going to do it for TITV for this Tuesday night in Tuscaloosa. Reminder, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 or find it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Take us out, Jermaine Burton. Good night.